Hey, Scott, Sambucci here at Sales Qualia. And in this video, what I want to share with you is what's called a priority-based selling strategy, or shifting to a priority-based selling strategy. So in the time that we have, I'll take about 15 minutes or so here. What I want to do is, number one, define what do I mean by a priority-based selling strategy. Number two, I want to show you a short model to how to kind of put a picture in your mind as to what we mean, but what I'm talking about in terms of priority-based. This is specifically important if you're trying to sell large enterprise solutions. If you're a startup especially, and you're selling what we call above the line. So these are executives that are at the top of the organization making bigger decisions in terms of budgets and implementations. So I'm going to give you a model or a way to think about this. Thirdly, I'm going to show you a really quick example of how you can start doing this right away today in your sales strategy for your startup. And I'm going to use an example of something that I did years ago as we were first going out and finding our first customers when I was at Blend. So Blend's a lending software platform, and years back I was first head of sales. And one of the things that we did is focus on a certain market segment and focusing on above the line executives. So we had to take this priority-based selling approach to do that. And then finally, the last thing I want to do is just show you, especially if you're a fintech startup or you are selling a enterprise technology product into the financial market, whether those are banks or trading houses or any other sort of financial market institution or company. I'm going to show you how to get some more help because we're running a masterclass later this month. I'm going to talk about that and how that works. Okay, so first and foremost, when we're talking about a priority-based selling approach, I also want to thank two people in particular. I want to thank Jason Bay and Megan Mishiak. So both Megan and Jason are coaches in our Startup Selling Coaching Program. And one of the things they're doing every day, aside from working with their clients in their business and also working with our clients here in the Startup Selling Coaching Program, is constantly looking through, like, what are the best strategies? How do we constantly improve and help our clients, make sure they're getting the right meetings with the right people, and then, of course, pulling those deals through the pipeline, and finally, of course, building a repeatable, scalable sales process. And both of them actually came to me with this and sort of named this priority-based selling strategy in a conversation that we had a couple months ago. And in fact, they've done some training with their clients on this. And so as they were describing it, it sort of light bulb went off for me. Is like I had never kind of named it a priority-based selling approach, and their description of it made me realize, like, oh, I've actually done this before. I just didn't know that I was doing it. So it really a huge credit to both of them for helping to kind of name this process, as well as helping to put some frameworks and models to it that we've been rolling out to our clients. So let's first talk about the way that most startups think about their sales process. So typically, I can imagine that you've been on the receiving end of these emails or of these inbound messages that you're getting. And on the screen, you'll see I'm going to go over to a model in just a minute. And typically, the wrong way and the biggest mistake that most companies make is they take a very product-based sales approach. So you're sending out cold emails, or you're getting those cold emails, and the email's all about the product. Like, I have built this product. I am the founder of this company, and we have an AI platform that has this feature and that feature. It's all product-based. Effectively, what you're doing is just like candidly puking on your prospects. Like, blah, this is what we do. This is what we built. Do you want to see it? That obviously is not useful in a selling approach, because it's all about you. It's not about your prospects. And especially when you're selling above the line, those key executives at the companies that you're targeting certainly don't care about your product. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in the model I'm going to build in just a moment. So the biggest mistake, the number one mistake is, and you can think about your own process, are you taking a product-based approach as opposed to a priority-based approach, which I'll talk about more in just a moment. The second mistake, which isn't as bad, it's certainly better than a product-based approach, but it doesn't get you all the way to where you need to go to sell above the line, and that's taking a problem-based approach. And so, again, if you think about maybe some emails you've received or calls you've received as a founder, as a CEO, somebody trying to sell you something, or maybe some messages you're sending out, it might be a problem-based approach, which is like, hey, we work with banks that have this challenge and with payments, or they have this challenge with integrations or compliance, and we help to solve that problem for banks just like you. better, certainly better than a product-based approach, because you're not just vomiting on your prospects all about what your product does and why it's AI, why AI is cool and you have this feature and that feature. At least you're sort of getting into the mindset of your prospects, which is like, hey, if you have this problem, there's a gap and we can help you fill that gap. We can help you solve that problem. And that's frankly, you even hear about like find the pain with your prospects, because people buy aspirins, they don't buy vitamins. You've heard different versions of this, like why you need to be problem based, and that's important too. Especially later on in your sales process, you might need to continue to look at core problems and what it might be costing your prospects if they don't solve it, or what opportunities they're giving up because they haven't solved this gap, or they haven't filled this gap that they have. When we talk about priority-based selling, this is where the model, I think, becomes really important. So let me flip over to that for a second here. I'll just make the model a little bit larger as I share my screen. The way I want you to think about this model is on the y-axis, the up and down axis. What we're going to be thinking about is sort of the level of the person that you are selling to, or the person in the organization. So at the top of the organization, of course, is the C level, right? Or sometimes they might be an executive vice president. That's the top of the organization, and then sort of at the bottom of the organization are people that are managers, managing small teams. It could be sales teams or product teams or IT teams, development teams, whatever those are. And then in between, you have other levels as well. There's directors, and I'm just going to use my experience selling into the financial market, because these are kind of the tiers or the structure of the org. The bottom level at any sort of leadership capacity is somebody that's called a manager. Above that is a director. Above that is where you start to see a VP title. So it's somebody that's considered an executive in their organization. But I remember when I worked at CoreLogic, we had hundreds of VPs across the organization in a big publicly traded company. So yeah, I was, people are executives when they're VPs, but they're certainly not top of the organization kinds of folks. And then above the VPs, in this middle area between the VPs and the EVPs, are usually something like a senior vice president, might be something like a general manager, general manager in charge of the Northeast, or general manager in charge of Europe. Not quite at the C level, but certainly fairly senior. And so earlier on in this video, I talked about selling above the line. And so that line usually, at least again in my experience, is kind of right around that VP, level, right? So let's just draw a line here. So we have it. So this is where again, if you're selling larger enterprise, you're selling at least a $50,000 a year product, maybe as low as $30K, but certainly when you're getting to 50 and $100K or more, you're going to be selling above the line. And anybody that isn't directly involved with the purchasing decision, doesn't have the ability to release the budget to make that investment. You might have those people involved in the conversations, but they're not ultimately the decision makers, right? So they're what we call below the line, above the line and above the line. So I call it ABL or AL, above the line, or BL being below the line. So this is where you want to think about priority-based selling, because if we translate this spectrum of product-based selling versus problem-based selling, and then moving into priority-based selling, we can actually start to think through these different levels in the organization and the timelines or the time horizons by which each of these people are thinking. So if you think about a manager, what does a manager do? Well, a manager is usually thinking about sort of a daily or weekly output. What is my team doing today? Did they close the tickets? Did they make their calls? Every week, did we convert some new customers? Or, did we hit the sprint in the product sprint? Or did we solve the bugs? Did we fix the bugs if it's a development team, right? It's like, that's sort of like daily or weekly time horizon that managers are thinking, right? Now, directors might be thinking slightly longer. They might be thinking, say, monthly. The directors are working with a couple managers who have these small teams, and the directors are responsible for hitting those monthly goals. It might be a quota if it's a sales director, got to hit a monthly number. If it's a product director, it might be around, hitting the launch or the release based on the sprints and the fixes we've made. If it's IT that you're selling to, or it's compliance that you're selling to, it might be, are we on the path to hitting the quarterly outcomes, but my job as a director is make sure that we're hitting the monthly goals, right? So then you keep going up the organization, and you can start to imagine that the higher up in the organization, it's almost like as you move up a mountain, you get a better view, you get a longer view of what's out on the horizon. So the VP level, those people, they're typically thinking quarterly. And again, it might vary a little bit based on your business, based on your industry, but typically it's, kind of quarterly. So VP of sales is like, we got to hit our quarterly number, right? Easy way to think about it. And the same with any other VP level. They might be responsible for, bigger product release or product launches that they're doing this quarter, as opposed to product updates that the directors are responsible for. Okay, so if we keep going up the organization, now we're talking about the SVPs, and we're talking about the C level or the EVPs. And this is where I'm going to start to show a specific example, and then also talk about how this is one of the strategies that we're going to be teaching and helping you implement as part of the masterclass that we're going to be teaching in just a couple weeks. Okay, so the SVP, this person is probably thinking annually, or sort of like, each year. So what are the annual goals for my division? What are the annual goals for this product line? What are the annual goals when it comes to digitizing the enterprise or meeting the compliance rules and regulations within an industry or for that company? It's sort of like big picture, certainly bigger picture stuff. Like, what's the annual output that we're trying to get to? It can be annual sales number if it's a SVP of sales, or a national sales manager, or a general manager, right? And then finally, if you go to the top of the organization, this is where these people are thinking anywhere from 1, but as far as 3 to 5 years out. Like the EVPs, the C level, I mean, they're setting the vision and really making sure, like, are we moving as a company in the right direction to meet our strategic objectives as a company over the long run? And so this is where, when you think about, product-based selling versus problem-based selling versus the importance of getting to shifting to a priority-based selling strategy. Because down here, these managers and probably even these directors, when you email those people, or if you're running a LinkedIn ad or something like that, and it's all about the product, you might get a manager or director like, yeah, they click, like, yeah, I want to see the demo. I want to see the product. This looks really cool. And part of that is because those people are feeling a lot of the pain that you might solve on a day-to-day basis for companies. It could be a manager who's using a bunch of spreadsheets that would love to use some kind of automated platform. Or maybe it's a director that's finding they don't have a great dashboard to analyze all of the work from all of their teams, and they're getting these individual reports, and they kind of have to cobble it together. It's like, wow, it'd be really great if you have a dashboard. You have a dashboard? I want to see it, right? So they actually get excited about the product. The people above the line, they don't care about that day-to-day stuff. They just assume that the directors and managers are handling or dealing with it. If something pops up, if there's a fire that it needs to be put out, like, that's why they have VPs and directors and managers. So as you move up the organization a little bit, these VPs, because they're thinking kind of quarterly, then they might start thinking about that problem-based approach. So they might say, yeah, we do have this problem, and it's really like, I'm hearing it from the team. The team is complaining that they can't do this, or the output, we're not hitting our numbers, or we have this issue or this challenge, and yeah, like, that's the problem that I have. And the VPs, it's almost like a thankless job, because you're the in between. As a VP, you're not the senior level management, but your job is to carry out the strategy on a day-to-day basis and help those directors and managers hit their daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly goals. So they're feeling pain a lot of times. But where we really want to go with this is, as I said, we want to get to a priority-based approach where your SVPs, your GMs, your C-levels, your EVPs, the people you really want to sell to, the people that are truly the decision makers, they're not waking up every day thinking about, like, oh, too bad that the team has to use spreadsheets every day. Gosh, I wish there was a better product for that. Or even if they hear, it might be copied on some email thread that identifies, like, oh, we got this fire, we got this problem that's we got to solve. The SVP might go, okay, yeah, I know there's a problem there, but good news, I've got this VP that works for me and that's going to handle that situation for me. What they're thinking about when they wake up every day, when they get in the office, when they're having their meetings, is thinking about, like, what are my priorities as a individual, like, leader, as an SVP, GM, EVP, C level, and what are the priorities of the company? And they're thinking about, like, day to day, how do I make sure that we're pushing forward and executing on those strategic priorities? And so when I talk about shifting to a priority-based approach, This means that as you're doing your outreach, as you're communicating with your target market, especially people that are above the line, what you need to be doing is first of all, you need to know what those priorities are. And secondly, you need to show those EVPs, SVPs, how you can help them achieve those strategic outcomes. You can help them with those things which are their priorities each and every day. Okay. So you can certainly do this when you're talking to lower level, below the line people. You can ask them about their priorities as well. You can say, hey, as a VP, my sense is your priorities are this or that. Is that true? And they might say, yeah, like you get it. You understand my job. Then you can shift into, okay, well, what are the things that are keeping you from executing on those priorities? What are the problems that are cropping up every day? So you can work this down into the organization as well. Most importantly, if you're selling enterprise and you know that you have to get that SVP or EVP involved with the decision because they're the ones that have the $200,000 budget that is going to be necessary to make the investment to work with you, then you need to make sure that early on in that sales conversation, even from the time of your initial outreach, all the way through your sales pipeline, and all the way through your sales funnel, that you're talking about their priorities and mapping how your product is going to solve the problems in a way that's going to help those senior level people execute on their priorities. So that's what I mean by shifting to a priority-based approach. Now, what I want to do is show you an example, and this example I'm going to show you is exactly the kind of stuff that we're going to teach in the masterclass. So in the masterclass that we're going to be teaching, which I'll just talk about in just a moment in more detail, we're going to have both Megan as part of the day together. Both Megan, this is Megan Mishiak here. Her company is called Path to the President's Club. And again, she does coaching in our program. And Jason Bay, who is the founder of Blissful Prospecting, again, he also does coaching in our coaching program with our founders, with our sales teams of our clients. They ran a training for our clients back in July, and I've asked them to run that same exact training for our masterclass. And so what they're going to be teaching you is exactly what I'm about to show you. This is just one small example that I think you could put to work right away for yourself, and hopefully will help you get some insight as to like why you would want to join this masterclass. Okay. So when I was at Blend, I was the first head of sales. It was employee number 13. So my job was to go out and get those first customers, get that first revenue in the door, really start to move us out of just product building and experimenting into finding some product market fit. And some of the earliest customers that we were selling to were the top 100 lenders. So you can see on my screen, I'm showing Wells Fargo. So Wells Fargo is obviously one of the top lenders in the United States. And one of the things, hold on, let me make sure I've got a couple screens open here. So I think I'm showing you the wrong thing. Get back to that. Okay, got it. Yeah. So what you've got here on your screen is the annual report from 2014 at Wells Fargo. So we had this big meeting at Wells Fargo. And in that meeting that we ran, then one of the things that we did was, I got a little funkiness going on with what I'm showing. So I think we got it here. Okay. One of the things that we were able to do is put together a meeting of key executives at Wells Fargo. So these are above the line people, right? And so, in preparation for that big meeting, one of the things I did was look at their annual report. So if you go to their annual report, this is the best place to find their strategic priorities. So if we're selling above the line, the people above the line, they're responsible for executing on these company priorities. And you can see, just looking at this annual report, in the first section of every annual report is usually a letter to the shareholders, and it talks about the company priorities. So I looked at this and said, okay, so we're selling a lending platform that's designed to give consumers a better lending experience, and it's designed to help the lender have a more efficient process from beginning to end. And look at their priorities that are outlined here. Like, their priorities are things like putting customers first, growing revenue, managing expenses, connecting with communities, managing risk, creating exceptional customer experiences, digitizing the enterprise. So these are the company initiatives, right? So as we're going into that meeting and preparing our talk track about what we're going to talk about, it's not about like, hey, we built this platform that allows you to do custom workflows. The executives don't care about that. What they care about is, hey, In the next 3 years, we want to make sure we're digitizing the enterprise. In the next 2 years, we want to make sure we're starting to take back some market share that we're losing to companies like Quicken because they're perceived to have a better customer experience. So now we're mapping our talk track to those priorities that we know those companies have. So this is a very simple way for you right now. If you're selling to publicly traded companies or Fortune 500s or large enterprises, you can go to annual reports or press releases or other ways to find out what those priorities are. And then as you're starting those conversations, make sure that you're talking about their priorities, not just what your product does or just the problems that you solve. Okay. So this is just a really small sliver of what we're going to be teaching, these kinds of approaches, very tactical approaches when it comes to ramping up and scaling up your sales process so that you can convert more deals, build a repeatable process, and start making the impact that you want to make in your market. So let me talk a little bit more about the masterclass, what we're going to cover. So one of the things I'll do is I'll put a link here in the comments below if you're watching this on LinkedIn. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, we'll probably replay this on the podcast. Simple thing you can do is just send me a DM, either on LinkedIn if we're connected, or you can shoot me an email, scott@salesqualia, QUALIA.com. That'll go right to my inbox. Either I'll see it or somebody from my team will see that, and we'll let you know. You can just type in the subject line masterclass, and then we'll know that you're interested in getting some more info or learning more about how this class might help you. But here on the screen, one of the things that's really important is just like there's a lot more details here. So you can go over to the salesqualia.com/masterclass to read this and save your spot if you want to. But a couple things I really want to point out is that we run masterclasses a couple times a year. And in some cases, we'll teach a masterclass, kind of across different industries. We'll teach a masterclass for B2B enterprise startups, early stage companies, seed stage, A-round companies, and just kind of focus, general strategies. In this particular masterclass, every example, every case study, every framework that you're going to be learning is going to be taken directly from my personal experience at Blend, selling into the financial market, as well as our work every single day that we've been doing over the last 10 years with dozens of fintech startups. So every strategy, every system, all the frameworks, all the case studies, all the examples are going to be very focused on fintech-based companies or companies selling to the financial market. So if that's you and you want to get some help building some repeatable, scalable sales processes, then this masterclass is definitely something you want to check out. I mentioned that part of the day you're going to have Megan and Jason teaching this moving from problem-based or product-based selling into priority-based selling with account research and messaging. So that's going to be part of the day. And then another big part of the day to help you get a bigger view of your entire sales process is that we're going to be running through what I call the 9 sales accelerators. These are the 9 core systems that if you're an early stage company that has some customers, you've got some revenue, but you don't have any repeatability in your sales process, then these 9 accelerators are basic systems. Think of it as components of your sales machine or machines in a larger factory. These are the 9 selling systems that if you get these in place, it will accelerate your growth. First of all, it's going to help you find more leads, convert more deals at higher prices. Secondly, it's going to give you the foundation of your sales playbook so that as you get those repeatable processes in place and you want to start scaling your go-to-market, you'll be able to do that because you've got core systems that you can hire people to run for you, and then you'll have a way to measure their output. So these 9 accelerators are critical to any company that wants to get out of startup phase and into ramp up and scale up phase. So one of the things we're going to be doing is taking a good hour or so, and I'm going to walk you through a self-assessment that we're going to do live. I'm going to talk you through these 9 sales accelerators, and you're going to give yourself a score so you can figure out a couple of places where you might be doing really well and you've got some strength in your sales process, but then also finding places where you've got some gaps or weaknesses, or maybe some systems that are completely non-existent that you need to get going over the next 3 to 6 months if you in fact want to get to a place where you're going to grow more rapidly and also grow in a repeatable, scalable way. Then we're going to talk about your sales funnel from top to bottom and how these accelerators and systems fit into your sales process. And then finally, the last thing we're going to do is help you build what I call a transition plan. And in that transition plan, what we're going to do is take that as assessment, that evaluation that you've done. Take a look at where you are, where you want to go, and identify what are the roadblocks, what's getting in your way or slowing you down or stopping you from getting to the place you want to go. Maybe you're at $300K in revenue now. You want to get to $1 million in annual recurring revenue in the next 12 months. Maybe you're just coming up to $1 million in revenue now and you want to triple your up to $3 million in annual recurring revenue in the next 12 to 18 months. There's going to be specific strategies, specific systems, specific skills that you and your team are going to need to learn. This transition plan is going to help you identify where you've got these gaps, and then it will help us then move into what we call a sprint planning session. So it's going to help you take this macro assessment, turn it into specific projects for yourself, and then action items for you over the next 6 weeks so you can get started and get on the way to ramping up and scaling up your sales process. So that's the way that the masterclass is going to run. Again, this is something that we do. We only run these masterclasses a couple times a year because of the time, that it takes for us to prepare. Most of the time we spend is with our clients, as you can imagine, in our coaching program. So, if you're a fintech startup in particular, or you're selling to the financial market, as I mentioned before, trying to mess around with this screen a little bit. Sport cameras. Got it. I love when technology works. This is a great time of year to hop on because one of the things we've doing right now this month with all of our clients is doing an evaluation of where they are in their sales process, where they are year to date. You've done all of that learning in the first half of the year. You've come through the summer. Now you're probably looking ahead to the rest of this year, as well as what is 2022 going to look like. And so this time of year is a perfect time to do this evaluation and assessment so that, number one, you can identify some gaps and start filling those gaps immediately and getting that little pop in Q4 that you're looking for. Maybe you've got some deals that are stalled in your pipeline. If you've got the right systems to get them activated and move forward, that's going to help your growth. Maybe you don't have enough leads coming in. We can help you with a lead generation strategy that's going to get you more leads into the top of the funnel, and maybe some quick moving deals can, again, get those into your Q4 numbers. And then even further, building the foundation for what we call making next year what we call a jump year. So wherever you're at right now is not where you want to be in the next 12 months. What you want to do is you want to jump up to that next level. Again, whether that's getting from 300K in revenue and your jump is getting to $1 million. Maybe you're $1 million in revenue. Your next jump is getting to $3 million. We have some teams that are hitting the $3 million range in annual recurring revenue. Their next jump is to get to $10 million in revenue. So these jumps are really critical. And the systems, the strategies, the skills that you use to get to where you are typically not the same system strategies and skills that are going to get you to that next level. You need to change those systems. You need to build those systems. You need to implement new strategies in order to get to that next place, in order to jump up in that growth curve. And that's what this masterclass is designed to do. It's going to help you see those strategies and systems, what skills you and your team need to acquire in order to make those jumps. So this time of year is a great time to do it. And that's why we're running this masterclass. So hopefully, you learned something here in terms of understanding what we mean by shifting to this priority-based sales model, why it's so important if you're selling above the line. So if you're an early stage company, B2B company, you're selling to the enterprise, you're selling 50K deals, 100K deals or more, you're going to be selling above the line. So you need to shift from product-based and problem-based into priority-based. Secondly, I gave you a quick example of how I've done that in the past and how you could very quickly start doing that right now with deals that you're working or prospects that might be in your target list. And then obviously showed you a little bit about how you've got to get some help from me and the rest of the team in the upcoming sales masterclass. So if you're interested in joining, again, the link is going to be down below where you can save your spot. I should mention that in addition to a day with me and the team in this masterclass, the ticket that you'll purchase, it also includes a 1-hour strategy session post event. So once we've built your transition plan in this masterclass, we've done the assessment, you've learned some systems and skills that you need to implement, you've built this transition plan, then what we'll do is use that 1-hour strategy session to take a look at that transition plan and just make sure that you're focused on the right things. It's sort of like, we want to make sure that you're not just coming and then leaving and hope for the best. It's really important to us because this is all we do every single day is help early stage companies get out of startup mode and then into ramp up and scale up mode. Make sure that you're not just doing work, but you're doing the right work for your company for the stage that you're at. So that 1-hour strategy session is also included as part of your seat in the masterclass. So you get a day with us, and then you get the 1-hour session afterwards to review that strategy and make sure that you're focused on the right stuff. So that's what we do as coaches every single day. So, all right, that's it for now. Hopefully it's useful. Again, if you are listening to this on the podcast or you're catching the LinkedIn Live later on, you can either go over to salesquality.com/masterclass, and that has all the details and where you can register. You're also welcome to DM me if you're on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a DM. You can comment down below. Just type masterclass. That means you want to have a quick chat just to make sure maybe you've got some questions. Make sure this is the right fit for you. You're also welcome to shoot me an email, scott@salesqualia.com. Just type masterclass in the subject. I'm not in my inbox every day, but my assistant is, and she will make sure that we get you set up with the information you need and the questions you need to get answered. Okay, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're listening to this in the podcast, and that's it for now. Scott Sambucci, signing off.